Welcome, everyone, and thanks for listening in to this month's edition of Tales from the CTO. My name is Jamie from ProServeIT, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today. For today, we're going to be talking about the incident with Sunwing, and this has popped up. I've had quite a few questions from a number of executives around kind of what happened. Is there risk to my business? Can the same thing happen to me? And I figured it would be worthwhile to have a quick chat to quickly understand what did happen with the Sunwing incident in non-technical terms, and then review a few things to consider for your own business around ways that you can either A, mitigate, or B, prepare for a similar type of incident to happen to you. So one of the most important things, and I think things that isn't well understood with the Sunwing incident, is that it wasn't actually Sunwing itself that was compromised. It was one of the vendors, one of the software vendors that they use for bookings, that was actually the culprit, if you will, or not the culprit, but the one that was attacked. And because one of Sunwing's vendors, their booking system, which is a software platform that they leverage, it basically brought down their digital online booking, which forced them to do all boarding processes manually, which obviously created bottlenecks and had them cancel a bunch of flights. And then the rest is history, so to speak. But it wasn't Sunwing, right? It was this booking system. And if we think about that from our own business perspective, I'm sure every single person that views this can recognize that, yeah, you use software too. And what would happen if one of those pieces of software were compromised? Not even if you were compromised, what would happen if one of those pieces was compromised? So I think first things first, there's kind of 4 ways that we feel are important to prepare. And a note about this, nothing is perfect, and we recognize that you can't really create a plan. I think the process and the value is actually in the act of thinking through this and of planning, not the actual plan itself. If a crisis would occur, I know whatever we planned for would be slightly different than what we do, but it's the actual element of thinking, okay, what are the risks? What are the things that we can do that will better prepare, I think, you in the event this happens. And the other piece I will say, is that we do feel this is, to a certain extent, unavoidable. Let's take a nuclear option, so to speak, of what would happen if Microsoft were hacked, because almost everyone in the world, from a corporate perspective, uses Microsoft. Even those that are not on Office 365 still probably use Office, like Word, Excel, etc. If that was compromised, what would you do? I mean, that would be very unlikely based off of the amount of money, et cetera, that Microsoft pays, and other reasons that might make them less at risk than a boutique vendor that might be more easier to compromise. But I mean, that's more of an example where this can happen to anyone, and we are all at risk. It's just for us to evaluate the significance of that risk. And I think that's the first step, is understand who are your vendors. Just document them. What are the vendors that we use, which are critical to your business, and understand of the critical ones, what would be the impact if they were compromised? Do they have, confidential information? Would it be a reporting event, for example, if that information was compromised, or if that vendor was compromised? Would there be financial impact? Do we have the appropriate security coverage, insurance coverage to manage that sort of an event? So that's important to think through. The second thing is, of those vendors, ask them, engage in a dialogue with your vendors, and ask them specific questions about their cybersecurity practices and their risks. I know that many organizations actually have a vendor vetting process or vendor onboarding process that requires vendors to fill out, risk forms and attestations that specify they're investing appropriately for cybersecurity and they're not posing a risk. And if they do, here's the mitigation efforts they have in place. And in these conversations with these vendors, get a sense, do you feel comfortable that they're investing appropriately in security, that they have your business interests in heart as well, or not? 3, and this is in the, okay, if it happens, right, what are the possible backup processes or workarounds for any of these critical applications that you may be using, or critical operations? Are there manual things, and is it documented? Is it well understood? Are there people in your business that have specific knowledge? And potentially, if they're on vacation, if this were to occur, then what? So it's important to think through some of these scenarios. Again, I'm not looking for a crystal clear plan, so to speak, but understanding, what are the requirements would be very, very helpful. And finally, it is important to know who would be your crisis response team, and that what would the communication plan would be. I think with any crisis, there is opportunity, and I won't talk about the opportunity piece, but in the crisis element, it is critical to think through, are you going to create a pod-based approach to this? So like if I think of the Sunwing incident and the magnitude of that's a challenge that's very, very large. And how do you actually compartmentalize that problem and chunk it down to a point where we can be successful? And how are you going to chunk it down? And if we kind of, again, map it back to the vendors that we use and the potential risk that they represent, are all of them to the point where we actually need to create pods and chunk down the problems, or are they isolated enough where we wouldn't need to involve almost everyone in the business, for example? So it is important to think through, for those specific vendors, what are the different plans, or what are the different people that you would need to involve to incorporate into this? Obviously, this is at a high level. I'm not presenting this to be, do these 10 steps to prepare and, be ready. However, these are kind of just some high level thinking to better prepare your business for this potential eventuality. If you do have any questions, I would love to have a conversation. You can reach out at cto@proserveit.com, and looking forward to the next conversation. Thanks, everyone.